Why your blue isn't my blue. There's a particular kind of moment where you're standing next to someone, both of you looking at the same thing, and one of you says a color, and the other says a different one. Not a dramatic disagreement, more like a small hiccup. You're at a market, and someone holds up a jacket and says, "I like this grey-blue." And you look at it and say, "That's green." And they look at you, and you look at them. And then you both look back at the jacket, as if it might settle the dispute. It doesn't. Or a wall. Someone repaints a room and calls it warm white. You visit and think it's unmistakably pale yellow. They insist it's white. You start to wonder if one of you has something wrong with their eyes. Usually you conclude, probably fine, just one of those things. Move on. You've probably had a version of this. Maybe with a car. Is that navy or black? A piece of fruit. Is that orange-red or red-orange? A sky in the hour before sunset. Is that pink or more of a coral? The words are different, but you figure you're seeing roughly the same thing. You're just describing it differently. Language is imprecise, that's all. Here's the thing about that assumption. It's reasonable, and it's also completely untested. You've been making it your entire life, and you have never once had a way to check it. In February 2015, a woman in Scotland named Caitlin McNeil posted a photo of a dress to Tumblr. She was in a band that played weddings, and there had been a disagreement among her friends about what color the dress was. She thought people online might help sort it out. Within days, millions of people were in the middle of the strangest collective argument the internet had ever produced. Because they weren't arguing about taste or preference or interpretation. They were arguing about what was literally in front of them. Some people saw blue and black. Others saw white and gold, just as clearly, looking at the same image on the same screen. It became a news story, then a scientific case study. Researchers found that the key was something called color constancy, the brain's automatic habit of compensating for the light source it thinks is illuminating an object. Your brain doesn't just receive color, it interprets it. It asks, constantly and without telling you, what kind of light this thing is sitting in. And then it adjusts. If you assumed the dress was sitting in daylight, a blue-tinged natural light, your brain subtracted blue from the image and saw the dress as white and gold. If you assumed it was lit by warm artificial light, your brain subtracted that warm cast and saw blue and black. Two people, same image, completely opposite visual experiences. Neither wrong, neither hallucinating. Then the scientists went a layer deeper. A study published in 2017 looked at over 13,000 people and found a pattern. The way you answered had to do with your chronotype. Whether you were naturally an early riser or a night owl. People who spent more of their lives in natural daylight, who woke early and were active in the morning, were more likely to see white and gold. People whose lives tilted more toward artificial light and later hours were more likely to see blue and black. Not what you were looking at when you saw the dress. Your daily habits, accumulated over years, had quietly shaped how your visual system interpreted light. The same image. Different lifetimes of exposure, different color. Older people, it turned out, leaned toward white and gold too. More decades of daylight, more calibration in that direction. The scientists explained the dress. But the question it left behind was harder. If the same photograph can produce two genuinely different visual experiences, depending on the history you bring to it, what does that say about everything else you see? Here's the first thing to know. Color is not out there. The physical world contains electromagnetic radiation at different wavelengths. That's real. The wavelength is out there. But red is not. Red is something your brain constructs when certain signals arrive, and it runs its calculation. You have 3 types of cone cells in your eyes. They don't see color. They count photons. Each type responds most strongly to a different range of wavelengths, but their ranges overlap heavily, and none of them delivers a color. What your brain gets is 3 streams of signals. Color comes from comparing the ratios across all 3. It's a computation. The result, the distinct warm quality of red, the cool sharpness of blue, happens inside your head. 300 years ago, Newton noticed something most people still haven't absorbed. He wrote that light rays themselves are not colored. They only carry the power to stir up a sensation of color. The color is in the stirring, not the ray. There's a visual demonstration, though you'll have to take my word for it. Picture a checkerboard, alternating light and dark squares. Now picture a cylinder sitting on part of it, casting a shadow. One square in the shadowed area and one square in the bright area look like different colors to you. The one in shadow looks lighter gray. The one in light looks darker gray. A photographer measures them. They are, in terms of the actual light hitting your eyes, physically identical. Your brain has decided the shadowed square must be lighter than it looks because it's in shadow. So it brightens it for you. What you see is not what's there. What you see is your brain's best interpretation of what's there. Those happen to be different things. Now your hardware is different from other people's. The ratio of your red-sensitive cones to your green-sensitive cones varies enormously between individuals. Some people have roughly equal numbers. Others have 16 times more red-sensitive cones than green-sensitive. This ratio varies by a factor of 16 across human beings, not 16%, 16 times. And yet people at either extreme score identically on standard color matching tests. The brain compensates completely. It doesn't matter what the raw equipment looks like. The output is calibrated to match. 2 people with radically different cone ratios both believe, correctly by their own experience, that they see normal color. Think about someone you know well, a close friend, a sibling, someone you've spent years with. The 2 of you could be looking at the same apple, running completely different optical machinery, both arriving at red. And neither of you would ever have a reason to suspect it. You've compared notes your whole lives without realizing the notebooks might be in different handwriting. You're both right about what you see. You're both seeing something real, and you have no way to confirm whether it's the same thing. So 2 people can have genuinely different eyes, have their brains perform genuinely different computations, and arrive at experiences they'd both call seeing red, with no way to check whether that experience is the same. And your own colors are changing. As you age, the lens of your eye slowly yellows, slowly, almost imperceptibly, like a filter settling over a lamp. The world you see today is measurably warmer in hue than the world you saw 10 years ago. You haven't noticed, because color constancy does its work silently. It compensates as the shift happens, keeping your experience stable enough that the change never trips an alarm. But there are moments when the compensation fails to mask what's been accumulating. Some people who've had cataract surgery, where the yellowed lens is replaced with a clear one, describe the experience of stepping outside afterward as a kind of shock. The world is suddenly, overwhelmingly blue. A blue they hadn't seen in years. Some of them cry, not from pain, but because they'd genuinely forgotten. They'd been living in a yellower world and didn't know it, which means you are not just seeing different colors from the person next to you. You are seeing different colors from the person you were a decade ago. Same sky, different tint. And you didn't notice the change. Some women carry a 4th type of cone cell, a genetic variation that creates a receptor tuned to a range between the standard red and green cones. In principle, that could mean finer color distinctions, more information. But in a large study searching for this functional ability, only 1 participant actually demonstrated it. Having extra hardware doesn't guarantee the brain builds new software to use it. So here's the question that has been sitting underneath all of this. You and a friend are outside. You both look up. You both say, "The sky is blue." You both learned that word from the same language, probably taught by someone pointing up at this same sky. But is the experience inside your head, that exact quality, that precise interior sensation of blue, the same as theirs? You have no way to know. John Locke asked this in 1689. A philosopher working before neuroscience existed already understood the problem clearly. You can compare descriptions, you can compare reactions, but you cannot compare experiences. No instrument can reach into your private perception, read out the texture of what you're seeing, and measure it against someone else's. More than 300 years later, that's still true. And it turns out the gap may be deeper than hardware. In 2007, researchers sat English speakers and Russian speakers in front of screens and showed them color patches. 2 squares would appear. Were they the same shade of blue or different? Press a button. The task itself was simple enough. What the researchers were measuring was how long people took. Russian has something English doesn't. 2 completely separate basic words for blue. Not light blue and dark blue. Those are modifications of one word. Russian has goluboy and siny, as categorically distinct as blue and green are in English. When the 2 patches fell on opposite sides of that boundary, one goluboy, one siny Russian speakers were faster. Not because they had better eyes, not because they'd practiced, because their language carved the color space at exactly that point. And when they reached that boundary, something snapped into focus for them that English speakers simply didn't have a groove for. Then the researchers added a wrinkle. They asked some participants to hold a string of numbers in their head while doing the color task. Just repeat this sequence silently to yourself. Keep it there. It sounds minor. It wasn't. Keeping numbers active in working memory pulls on language processing, the same neural machinery that handles words. And when Russian speakers were doing this, juggling digits in the background, their speed advantage on the color task vanished. Completely gone. So filling someone's head with numbers erased a visual ability. Language was not just a label attached to a color after it was seen. It was part of the seeing. Occupy it with something else, and the vision changes. 2 years later, a different team in the UK studied Greek speakers. Greek also has 2 basic words for blue, galatio and BLA. The researchers put people in an EEG scanner and flashed color patches at them. Greek speakers showed a spike in brain activity, a pre-conscious response when shown 2 blues from different categories. English speakers showed nothing comparable. It was a difference in the visual signal itself before the person was even aware they'd seen anything, before a thought formed, before any decision was made. The brain had already registered that something categorically different had appeared. The language structure wasn't just changing how they thought about color, it was operating earlier than thought. It was in the wiring. The Russian experiment showed language shaping a conscious task. This one showed it shaping something entirely below awareness. That's the escalation. You can, in principle, try to ignore a category you've learned. You cannot ignore a signal your visual cortex has already processed before you knew you were looking. There's a community in Namibia called the Himba, whose language groups what English speakers would call blue and green under a single word. In experiments, Himba speakers were slower to isolate a blue square among green ones. A documentary once presented this as the Himba not being able to see the blue. That's wrong. The difference was milliseconds of reaction time, not blindness. But they were faster than English speakers at distinguishing subtly different greens, because their language draws finer lines there. The world doesn't force one set of color categories on human perception. Language suggests categories, and perception, to some degree, follows. So here's where you've arrived. Color is a construction, not a delivery. Your eyes collect signals. Your brain builds something from them. That something is shaped by the cones you were born with, by the light you've spent your life around, by a lens that's been slowly warming the image for decades without telling you. And now, by language. By the categories your words drew into the color space before you were old enough to question them. None of this is a malfunction. It's simply how the system works. The striking part isn't that the system makes errors. It's that the system is this elaborate, this layered, and still produces something that feels so immediate, so plainly just there. That blue sky, that red coat, that particular green of trees after rain. They feel like facts about the world, and they are facts, just not quite the ones you thought. They're facts about what happens when this particular brain, with this particular history, meets light. Evening light does something particular to a room. You know the quality, I mean. The light that comes in at a low angle and turns one side of everything gold. And the other side falls into a blue that's almost grey. You've seen it hundreds of times. You'll see it again tonight if you're near a window at the right hour. That colour isn't in the light. It isn't in the wall. It's a computation running in your brain. Shaped by the cones you were born with. Modified by years of exposure to particular kinds of light. Shifted by the slow yellowing of your lens. Framed by the colour categories your language built into your visual system before you knew it was happening. The person in the room with you is running a different version of that computation. Their eyes are wired differently. Their lifetime of light is different from yours. The words available to them may carve the space in a different place. They are also looking at that light on the wall. They are also calling it something. They mean it. But whatever is happening inside their head when they see it, you will never get to check.